Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Joshino and today I'm going to walk you through OB52, the latest patch that's come to the public test server on PC and will be likely coming next week sometime. I'm going to try and cover everything as quick as possible and give some insight on how things are going to play out in the game, whether they're good or bad. So the first big addition and coming to Paladins is a new game mode called Onslaught. So in Onslaught the idea is that you basically just kill each other and try and control a massive control point in the middle of the map and get tickets, which are the point system in this game, and the first to 400 points wins, or after 10 minutes the one with the most points. Now it's sort of the reverse of say Battlefield or something like that, and it's also a lot like Smite's Arena if you have also played that game. Currently this is only on the old maps for survival mode, which is Primal Court and Snowfall Junction, and honestly it does feel a bit shoehorned into these maps. Now if you've played Smite before in the Arena, it has basically Arena, and honestly I feel that the maps are maybe a little too small for what they're trying to do here. A lot of the time you're in very clusterfuck situations and there's not a lot of movement in the map at all. The maps are very small, and in survival mode where you have one life, it doesn't matter as much and you come back in rounds, but I feel in a deathmatch mode, for me at least, it doesn't completely work out. And again, I don't think necessarily the type of mode is the problem, but I don't know whether the maps and the mode completely fit together. Has anyone else played it? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you think. But from what I've played so far, and it's not a lot because the servers and the game have been a little bit buggy for me and I can't play properly on the PTS, but what I have played I just got that feeling. Obviously the positives of this mode is that it's fast, you only have 10-minute games, so it's something that you can just come in, don't have to commit to anything really. This is just a nice little short and sweet mode where perhaps you can even just go to practice your aim, and it's probably going to be a warm-up game. I know that in CSGO I used to play a lot of gun game or go into deathmatch to get my aim up, and this could work in the same way here. Some of the big updates are in the UI. So the first thing they did is at the end of game, end matches, what they've done is added the legendaries, loadout cards, and items to the history page at the end of the match lobby. This was wanted for a long time and people have been badgering hi-rez to get it out, and it's really important because it lets you learn from what enemies have been using, what their item choices are, and especially for newer players that aren't picking up during the game, reflecting after the game, looking what enemies that did well picked could be a way for people to learn. They've also said that they've improved their sound priority, basically that enemies behind you will be prioritized and the sound will be prioritized. I haven't experienced it that much, and from what I've been able to play, I'm not entirely sure, but I mean it sounds good and what they're trying to achieve is good. The second thing is optimizing the damage source indicator. A lot of people have been asking for this as well, and what this means is this sort of when you get shot, an indicator for the basically direction and area where you got shot from. It's still not massively accurate, but it's basically more thick, the line is. It's not as blurry and it's more obvious where you've been shot from. I think before it was easy to sort of filter it out because it was a bit foggy, and also the lines almost point inwards towards where you're getting hit. I think it's a little bit better, but I think there could be still some improvement there, maybe just having more of an indication on the exact area where you're being shot from. Just a quality of life thing, they replaced the name flank kills with killing blows. Before, nobody really knew what flank kills were. They're very ambiguous. What is a flank kill? Is it when you're behind enemy lines? No, it just means the killing blow. So they've updated that and it does make sense. And that's sort of what you're doing with a flank. You're going in, finishing enemies off that have been hit by your damage dealers, even just dueling people, taking out some of the key targets and the other enemy damage dealers. So I think it's a good thing, but I still wonder how credit-wise it works out, because killing blows aren't as easy as it all sounds. Another great thing that they've done is made it default so that players have show team health selected in the options, which is just very useful. The other thing that isn't default, but I wonder whether it should be, is show group health UI, which basically shows your whole team at the top of your screen and the health indicators there. Maybe have the option auto enabled just because it's so useful, and I think that if you play without it you are a bit hindered really. It could be a preference if you don't want to see it and you think it's too clunky and taking up too much space on the screen, like a visual thing, but for most players and players that are trying to play competitively as possible, it's a very important tool. They also added chat commands to /ignore and /block players, just a nice little touch. Another thing that they've said that they've done is worked with network optimizations. Now, because I'm having a lot of troubles in the PTS, I wonder whether this is having some unexpected effects, and we'll just have to see how this really works out. They're saying that the amount of subtle lag events went down by 99%, and slight lag events went down by 50%. Big bad lag events went down by 25%. But again, I haven't seen that so much just because the PTS is a bit buggy at the moment. And when I say that, the PTS is a public test server, so you always can expect some bugs. The only caveat is that hopefully hi-rez can fix things when it goes live next week. So onto the nitty gritty of the nerfs and buffs in OB52. So the first buff we see is to Barik. It's not a flat buff to his character, but to combat repair. What this card does is it heals your turrets as you stand near them. Now the card, instead of healing for 50, 100, 150 and 200, it now heals 100, 150, 200 or 250 whilst you're standing next to it. It is quite a popular card, but it isn't a massive buff in any stretch of the imagination. But it does work with Healing Station, which is the card where the turrets heal you up. So you can basically keep your turrets up longer, and the turrets will heal you and keep you up longer. So they kind of synergize together, just adding to the survivability of. And a lot of people have been complaining that the shield nerfs and things weren't great for him, but I don't think Barik's actually been that weak in the meta, although a lot of people have been calling for him to have some buffs. But we've seen him play quite well in some competitive games, and even in the casual matches, he's pretty good. So I guess this is just bolstering him a little bit. Next up, Fernando has had slight buffs as well. Again, not just to his base, but to his cards. So the first one is Cavalier, increasing the health bonus from 125, 250, 375, and 500 at each level to 150, 300, 450, or 600 at each level. Basically, again, slightly increasing everything, especially at the final level with an extra 100 health, making the increased health bonus more viable on Fernando. Next is Last Stand. What this card does is it heals you up to a certain percentage threshold once you put your shield up. Now what it was used before is when you get to low health, you put your shield up, and before you get to 50% health, and every second you'd heal 75, 150, 225 or 300 health every second when you put that shield up. Now that's been increased, so not only has the amount of healing been increased from 100, 200, 300 and 400 at each level, it also has had its threshold increased to 60%, so you'll also get your health back up to 60% as well. So basically it's increasing the health and also how much you can heal when you put up your shield. The ideal usage of this is using it when you're at your very lowest and you'll heal the most, and can save you as a Fernando, and could be one thing to really make Fernando a little bit tankier, and is one of the popular cards to be picked up to give you that extra sustain. And Fernando has been struggling a bit to find his way in the meta, and this is a nice little buff, just increasing the theoretical health pool. Grok has got a big buff to their ultimate that's been asked for a long time, and when I say big, I don't mean it's going to be the most ridiculous ultimate ever, but now the Tempest, his ultimate, will heal Grok for 500 health every 0.5 seconds. For a long time it's been a big problem that a Grok will ulti, but they're just so easy to burst down because they don't heal themselves, and this will mean that the ultimate will be much more useful, and most of the time the enemies will have a hard time bursting you down unless they're ready for you, or there's a dragon punch coming for you or something like that. So that's definitely a great buff for Grok, and maybe we'll see him peeking back into the meta a bit because he was pushed a little bit out, and especially in casuals I was seeing him hardly picked at all. Inara's got a bit of a questionable one. The Earthen Guard ability now has the bonus healing received increased from 60% to 80%. So this was added in the last patch, and they basically, instead of nerfing her completely, they just changed her a bit and tweaked it so that she wasn't as ridiculous as she was in OB50, but in OB51 she still had a lot of what made her viable, and now this has made her even more viable, I guess. We'll just have to see how it works, but Inara was already pretty good. The next one worth mentioning is Makoa. And basically their Shell Shield has now had a buff to their activation time, going from 0.3 seconds to activate to 0.1. It just means that you'll be able to use the shield much more reactively and say stop projectile coming in, or the last ditch efforts when you want to try and survive so you don't get bursted down before you can put down the shield. And it's just a nice little buff to Makoa. So going back, we've got Makoa, Inara, Barik and Fernando having some buffs, and maybe it's the patch of the front line this year. They're obviously giving them a lot of love. A lot of people have been complaining that the time to kill is too high at the moment, and these do go a little way to try and make tanks a bit more viable. But the only thing I feel is that the 2-tank meta is kind of boring, the 2-tank and 1 healer. I mean, the tanks in Paladins are quite versatile. You've got things like Ruckus that can fire at a distance. They're quite active and they have movement abilities that make them be quite aggressive and flank. But I can see how there's a bit of a difficulty between balancing the time to kill and having a strong 2-tank meta and like a deathball meta. And I can see where the developers are probably having a hard time with that. Next up is Maeve, and this is 9 lives, reducing the animation time from 0.7 seconds to 0.4. It's a little bit of a help, and especially to the legendary card that has extra stuff on the 9 lives, like the cleansing of status effects. It's just a nice little touch for Maeve, but I don't think it's going to bring her back into the meta at all this patch. She probably needs a lot more rejigging before that happens. Maldamba has had Mending Spirits fixed. Basically a bug was preventing healing allies through friendly shields, which was never good. So that's a nice little touch. And just a little fix, apparently Charlene's Vigilante voice pack was too low. Now I have the game sound quite low. I had the Vigilante pack and voice pack, and I didn't notice that, to be honest, but apparently it's a thing, so it's increased slightly, which is always nice. Anyway, getting on to the rest of the things coming to the realm, we've got some skins coming. Worth mentioning are the Obsidian and Cosmic stuff for Maldamba and Eevee, adding more champions to the Mastery lineup. Again, some people are a bit upset that the Mastery skins cost extra money on top, and I think that it's a bit weird. I know I've talked about the currency system, which hasn't been changed this patch, which is slightly disappointing, and they haven't even tried to address some of the issues we've had, which is annoying, but I don't think necessarily the Mastery stuff is the stuff to be annoyed about. They're cosmetics, and at the end of the day, they don't impact the game, so they could have been a very viable gold sink, which they are, but I think the essence system is already inhibitory to the way you spend your gold, and I guess they just sort of frustrate each other. And as I've said before, I don't want to get into detail, but separating the currencies, or basically just changing the way the whole grinding system works, taking things out of the chests, making the progression more controlled, and then tweaking the grind that way. Because the thing is, I'm level like 100 almost in the game, and I'm only really at the point where I can start saving gold and I don't need to buy anything else. So I can see how people are frustrated that they won't be able to get into that for a very long time, but then again, they are at very high level for the champions, so people like me are more likely to be able to get these. They're also giving away some skins for people that watch the esports games. Now, they haven't said how exactly it's going to work yet, and they're going to release that later, but there's a Blood Moon Cassie skin, which is the Nightbane skin, but red, basically. It's pretty cool, and I guess it's a cool idea that they're doing this. It's free skins, folks, so if you do want to watch the esports, and I would suggest doing it, actually, Paladins is quite fun to watch. And you've got great casters like Vox booming their awesome voice out there, so that is... The big skin this patch is the Ying Replicant skin. It's a very sassy, robotic voice for the Ying here. It's almost like a GLaDOS, but more sassy. And the character looks somewhere between C-3PO and something from... One of the characters actually really reminds me of Hellgate London. I remember on the cover there's like this silver sort of woman, robot sort of thing. I think she's screaming. I think there's one that looked a bit like that in Unreal Tournaments as well. It looks pretty cool. The only thing that annoys me with Ying skins is when the centerpiece of her mirror isn't transparent. But actually this does have like a spinning thing around the centerpiece, which is metallic. The beam is pretty cool. It's a bit more sci-fi. And also there's rings around when you ulti. And there's more of like a bluey purpley thing going on with the hue on the ulti. There's a Willow rare skin, and it's just brown. It's the Viceroy. I'm not really sure about this one. Personally, I'm like, I'm not enticed by this one, to be quite honest. They've also added a new map to the test map rotation, and that is Sewers. I haven't had a chance to check it out in full, but looks interesting. And that was pretty much OB52 in full. It hasn't been a massive patch, not lots of things have come. Obviously excluding Zhin, which I would say is awesome. The champion is one of the most creative in the animation so far, and maybe one of the most epic to play. I'm sure that a lot of people will be interlocking him, but gameplay wise only little dodges and touches here and there, mainly buffing the tanks a little bit, and the skins a bit there, and that new game mode, but it doesn't have any new maps coming with it. What does everybody else think about OB52? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button, dislike it if you really didn't, subscribe to me if you want to see more, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much for watching. Joshino.